Tonight, correctional workers in Port Augusta and Port Lincoln walk off the job, and the town of Broken Hill goes from outback to outrageous for the annual Broken Hill Festival.
This is Southern Cross News with Abby Donaldson.
Good evening. Correctional workers in Port Augusta and Port Lincoln walked off the job today to protest against the state budget cuts to the public sector. The industrial action means only minimum staff will patrol prisons until midnight tonight. Garth Burley has the story.
As a united front, 97% of the workforce from the Port Augusta prison gathered here in Gladstone Square for a barbecue to oppose proposed cuts to the public sector. This is all part of a statewide lockdown to protest against the cuts, with rallies also taking place in Port Lincoln and the Adelaide CBD. The strike means services in the prison are at a bare minimum, with under 20 employees manning the Port Augusta site today. It's in response to the government's plan to privatise the Adelaide Remand Centre.
This is just the first step. There'll be other services on the chopping block.
In Port Lincoln, there are concerns about the public future of key health services, as well as their own prison. The government has said it will not back down from its budget plans, and the Public Service Association says they won't walk away from the fight either.
From here, it has the potential to get uglier, and we have a range of plans in place.
Future rallies and abrupt stop work actions from workers in the public sector are looming threats. The PSA gave the government a manageable 4 days' notice before this strike. They say the next one could be significantly less time. The planned industrial action will finish at midnight tonight, with prison services expected to return to normal tomorrow and all these staff expected to return to work.
A South Australian senator is calling for the state government to end its support for drilling in the Great Australian Bight. It's hoped a decision can be made similar to the ban on fracking in the state's southeast 10 years ago.
Members of the state government are starting to take action on the community concerns regarding future drilling and exploration in the Great Australian Bight.
Given that the South Australian government has banned fracking in the southeast for 10 years in response to community concerns, and that there's a high level of concern regarding drilling raised by communities along the coast.
South Australian Independent Senator Tim Storer is in Canberra this week to raise his plan to oppose drilling to a federal level, a move welcomed by local industries.
It would be a welcome development for the state government to express their support of the South Australian fishing, aquaculture and seafood industries.
Today, Mr Storer started amending the Environmental Protection and Biodiversity Conservation Act of 1999 with a focus to shift the environmental responsibility to approve or reject drilling in the Bight away from the independent body NOPSEMA.
This would formally return final responsibility on authorising or rejecting drilling to the Environment Minister.
And suggests while the state government can't formally oppose oil activity in the Bight, changes can be made in Canberra to protect the region's waters.
I'm not sure of their legal responsibility. I believe it's at a federal level, and that's why I'm taking these initiatives.
Casey Trelaw, Southern Cross News.
The State Health Minister will visit the EP soon to address the ongoing doctors' shortage at Kimba. It comes after the Mayor quit as chair of the local health advisory board over a lack of government support.
For 3 of the last 4 years, Kimba has been without a resident GP. A locum visits 2 days a week, but outside of that, residents have to travel to Cleaver-Whyalla. The situation has cost the local health advisory board its chair, with Kimba Mayor Dean Johnson quitting in disgust.
We're not a third world country. I don't see why we should be discriminated against. Every suburb in the city gets a GP.
In his resignation letter, he slammed the state government, saying the health minister hadn't responded to his emails, and there's been a severe lack of support.
The recruitment process has been left up to council. It's that simple. There's no action from others.
But the health minister says he'll visit the region soon. Stephen Wade says he'd seen a letter from Mr Johnson in July and was waiting for a response from the department.
5 weeks later, the department provided me with a draft response. I regret that delay.
The opposition says the situation is unacceptable.
And it's often put down to the council to try and do the heavy lifting, which I don't think is acceptable.
But Mr. Johnson is sick of the continual diagnosis of the problem. He wants a cure found fast, warning there could be dire consequences.
My biggest fear is that someone will die because of this. It is that simple.
John Hunt, Southern Cross News.
Today is World Suicide Prevention Day, and many of our region's communities took the chance to ask people, are you okay?
It's hard to talk about, but there's always an open door in Port Lincoln to start the conversation.
It's World Suicide Prevention Day today, so Lincoln Alive decided that a really good thing that we could do would just be to say come down for a coffee, a cake, a chat.
With this year's theme highlighting organisations working together on suicide prevention.
Well, I think it's really important for the community to have safe people to talk to about suicide.
Suicide is the leading cause of death for men and women between the ages of 15 and 44. However, there's good news, the rates are dropping in regional areas.
It was good to hear at the last National Suicide Conference that I went to that the rates are dropping in regional communities, which is excellent to see.
Whyalla also held a special event yesterday in recognition of suicide awareness by placing roses in the ocean to symbolise loved ones lost or affected by suicide.
Suicide touches many people, directly or indirectly. The amount of people that were here today were probably all impacted by a suicide event.
West Coast Youth here will be hosting another open day on Thursday for Are You OK Day. And for anyone having a tough time, please get in touch with Lifeline or contact your local GP. Casey Trelaw, Southern Cross News.
Such an important message. After the break, the mining town of Broken Hill goes from outback to outrageous. We'll have all the highlights from the 3 days worth of drag, disco and divas in the desert. The state's Children Commissioner is in Whyalla this week as part of a regional tour. Helen Connolly says she's keen to hear how they can improve country kids' access to the same opportunities metro kids may take for granted.
She's in charge of looking out for our state's most vulnerable members of society, helping them develop into mature adults. Helen Connolly is turning her focus to regional kids, making a 2-day visit to Whyalla. It's part of her efforts to visit 10 regional centres in 10 months this year, connecting with up to 90,000 kids.
So it is a big population. I think often they're forgotten about, so I am definitely wanting to connect with them.
She'll meet with kids in early childhood, primary and secondary settings. Her main topic will focus on what country kids enjoy about growing up in the region and what they'd like improved access to.
What's fantastic about where you live, what might make it a bit better if you had some chances to improve it, and what are the things the community might be able to do to support you.
These talks will feed into a report Ms Connolly is preparing for the government. It'll outline strategies to help regional kids achieve their hopes and dreams at the same level as metro kids. Despite the ages, Helen says children are more aware of their surroundings than we think.
They are great barometers of what's actually going on, so I don't find any issue with them giving me some really rich and great information.
John Hunt, Southern Cross News.
Port Pirie's Italian community have ushered in the start of spring with an age-old tradition. Hundreds gathered at the Port Pirie waterfront to celebrate the blessing of the fleet.
St Anthony church bells in Solomon Town could be heard from the shoreline of the Port Pirie River, as people of all ages gathered at the boat ramp for the 89th Blessing of the Fleet Festival, a medieval Malfetes tradition which has boldly withstood the test of time.
Because this particular festa is a very important one for our Malfetese community in Port Pirie as well as in Adelaide.
The South Australian Governor was an honorary guest of the event.
The Italian community in Port Pirie is absolutely a shining example of how people migrate to this country, work very, very hard, and then build up the community together.
As the afternoon carried on, local Bishop Gregory O'Kelly, accompanied by a small armada, descended upon the river for the blessing of the boats. A statue of Madonna was at the centrepiece as members of the church blessed the ocean to ensure the safety of sailors and fishermen. The blessing of the fleet is an age-old tradition which spans back to the Crusades.
La Madonna di Marte which dates back to the 11th, 12th century when the Crusaders brought a holy picture, an icon of a Byzantine painting of Our Lady holding her baby child.
Next year's Blessing of the Fleet will mark the 90th anniversary of the festivities. Dominic Beaton, Southern Cross News.
The Port Pirie Rail Express is going full steam ahead and is returning to operation at the Tourism and Arts Centre. The railway service was temporarily suspended following a maintenance review. However, the mini train tourist attraction is now back on track thanks to the support of the Clare Valley Model Engineers. It's all aboard for those wanting to take a joyride on the first and third Sunday of each month. Broken Hill was awash with glitz and glamour at the weekend as the Broken Hill Festival swept across the city. Our own Patrick Reinke went to experience the three-day extravaganza filled with drag, disco and divas.
Life in the outback, it's never a drag. Drag kings and queens, dazzling and eye-catching costumes, stunning and sometimes raunchy performances, and the spirit of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, filled the palace.
It's getting bigger and better every single year.
The event got underway on Friday night with the weather turning it on across all 3 days. Saturday's street parade saw one of the biggest crowds in the city's main street. As night fell, the party got started with performances both inside and out. The Priscilla bus got a workout, the stage was sporting a mesmerising disco ball, and the crowd were loving it.
It's been such an amazing opportunity to perform here in our local town.
Headlining act Christine Arnoux hit it out of the park with an amazing set. The fun-filled night could have gone on till morning.
Now in its 4th year, the Broken Hill Festival certainly doesn't fail to draw in the numbers. With over 1,500 people from all over Australia converging here on the Palace, there were only 3 words to describe it all.
Absolutely fabulous, darling!
Recovery in Silverton was well deserved before the event was closed on Sunday night, but that was not before organisers announced dates for the 2019 festival, which will also be the 25th anniversary of the Priscilla movie.
Early bird tickets are on sale, yeah. People last year really wanted to make sure that they could get in early as soon as we announced dates, so lots of people have already rebooked accommodations, so you know, who would have thought, but she'll be running again before we know it.
Next year's Broken Hill Festival will be held on September 13 to 15, so save the date, darlings. Patrick Reinke, Southern Cross News.
How fabulous. Stay with us after the break. We'll have all the region sport results and in the weather.
It'll be another warm spring week ahead. I'll have all the details up soon.
Welcome back. And now here's a wrap of all the weekend sporting action. Garth Burley is in Port Augusta. And Garth, Railways have topped off their undefeated netball season by taking out the grand final.
Well, yes, Abby, Railways did get over the line, but not after a valiant effort from Vikings, whose young shooters helped put pressure on the favourites for the title. Railways hit the target early, feeding the ball into the goal circle. The nimble Vikings attackers responded, making the margin manageable to reduce. The vocal Vikings supporters tried to spark some confidence in their team, but it was all in vain as Railways clinched the title with a 16-point win. In Port Lincoln, a tight win to Imperial over Winilla Rangers means they will now face an informed Wayback in Saturday's grand final. Staying in Lincoln for soccer, and Lincoln City Raiders are the first team to book their place in the end-of-season cup final after a 3-goal win over South Coast. The Knights were also victorious, meaning the winner of next week's game between Lincoln Knights and South Coast will decide the other spot in the final. In Whyalla, Croatia's 2-goal loss against Steel United has proved fatal for their title contentions. A 2-0 win to Lions in the other match means they have now etched their names on this year's league title with still 1 round to play. There's plenty of exciting football action still happening around the region. In the Steel City, Waroona Bay has shocked North Whyalla, kicking 8 goals after half-time to move into next week's grand final. Cade Gale-Jones kicked 5 goals in the victory, which is a remarkable turnaround from 2 years ago, where the Bay were facing 200-point losses. Wayback won by 37 in the semi-finals of Port Lincoln footy, and in the northern areas, Orroroo has reigned victorious over Broughton Mandurah. They'll take on Crystal Brook in next week's grand final. And 200 kids battled it out in the annual Auskick Carnival in Whyalla, with Rupina taking out the Under-12s title and West Whyalla winning the Under-10s Gus Gillis Trophy. So very exciting times in local sport, with finals fever hitting all the regions. Back to you, Abby.
Thanks, Garth. Bring on the finals. And time now to see what the weather's looking like this week with Amy.
Thanks, Abby. Temperatures sat in the mid-20s and up towards 30 across the region today. Whyalla and Port Pirie reaching 28. Port Augusta are sunny 30 degrees. On the satellite, and patchy cloud is clearing in the far southeast as a high pressure ridge builds and causes onshore winds to weaken, which is causing the odd light shower. Skies are clear elsewhere under the ridge. If you're heading out on the waters tomorrow, southwesterly winds will pick up to 30 knots, with seas reaching 1 metre. Sunrise is at 6:27, while it's setting at 7 minutes past 6. Maximums will remain high tomorrow, despite the increasing chance of some showers. Port Augusta and Broken Hill, 29, Whyalla and Port Pirie, both 26 degrees. Possible showers and cloudy skies clearing by Friday in Port Lincoln for a fine 20. Skies will also clear around Cleve, sitting at 24 later this week after a fine 19 degrees on Thursday. Meanwhile, Woodnar will also see the sun return after a few days of possible showers and some cloudy skies. Maximums between 20 and 26 degrees to end the week. A mostly sunny week ahead in Whyalla, although Tuesday could see some showers and a top of 26, Friday reaching a high of 27 degrees. Similar conditions predicted in Port Augusta and Kadina, with temperatures ranging from the mid-teens up into the high 20s. And showers will clear in Port Pirie midweek as temperatures rise to 26 to close out this week. Sunny in Clare on Thursday and Friday, maximum sitting between 17 and 21 degrees. And in Broken Hill, after a cooler Wednesday, the mercury will be creeping back up into the mid-20s. So there is still the chance we may see some showers later this week. Abby, back to you.
Thanks, Amy. Here's hoping we get that rain. And that's all from the team this Monday. Thanks for your company. Good night.